So Pádraig Harrington uses the Superspeed Squeeze training tool while hitting balls to help him increase his clubhead speed and feel a different force through the club. So we're going to use this tool in a slightly different way where I'm going to hit balls and I'm going to see if this improves my ground reaction forces. So in golf biomechanics, how we interact with the ground, so through our feet, and how we hold the club, because they're the only two contact points with anything, these two areas work hand in hand. So if we change our grip, so our grip pressure, our grip forces, the feeling, this in turn has potential to change our ground reaction forces and vice versa. I'm going to put this to the test and we're going to see if this helps improve my ground reaction forces and the feeling of how I hit the ball. So to get started, I'm going to hit 5 7-irons to get an idea of what the data is in terms of carry distance and ball speed. We're then going to see when we use the super speed how that might change. From those 5 7-irons, I've averaged 197 yards, which is pretty much about bang on where my 7-iron should be. It's slightly downwind, so that's a little bit more helping. Club speed, again, is on average of 91 mile an hour with a ball speed of 123 mile an hour. So that's given us a baseline data. Now let's look at the ground reaction forces and see where that starts. Okay, so a quick look at the ground reaction force data. The main things we're looking at is the amount of total vertical force created, because that's the power output. So as we can see in the downswing, the peak force, the peak vertical, which the total is 144% of my body weight, is happening about shaft parallel with the ground in the downswing. So this is pretty good, but this could be much, much higher in terms of if we're trying to produce more speed, we'd want more efficiency in that respect. Okay, so now I'm going to hit some balls with the Superspeed Squeeze. Now, it's not actually really designed to do this. We're not trying to use this as an aid to hit the ball better or differently, but as Pádraig Harrington uses it, because it gives him a completely different feel. And one thing we're talking about is when we are in transition in the downswing, naturally we are pulling and applying a lot of force through the grip of the club, through the handle. We're doing this in different ways between the left and right hand, and this is obviously allowing us to generate force and power into the club, as well as having to learn to control the club face. So there's a lot going on there. But good golfers, as we know, utilize the ground especially in a vertical manner to not only create stability through the body, but also to generate more force into that handle, into that club head. So utilizing this bigger and fatter grip, in theory, could force a golfer to generate more force through the lower half to able to generate and apply more force through the grip. So I'm just going to hit some balls, and I'm just going to do this in quite a playful way, in the sense I'm not thinking too technical, and I just want to see how that feels first and foremost. Now, we wouldn't expect good shots to be here because the orientation of the hands in relation to the club head is obviously going to be very, very different. So straight away, that was quite a good strike for me, but the face is wide open. It's a big block because it's hard to feel I can hold on to it in the right way. And this might take a few balls to just get used to, but straight away that feels like I'm having to really hold on to that club through the hitting zone. Otherwise, I'm almost going to let go of it. So that kind of forearm and grip strength is being utilized and forced to work much, much harder. I felt a little bit freer. Naturally, the club head's much more open. And when I look at this on my data, I can see the club and ball speed are a little bit lower than if I was swinging normally. So I'm just going to try and just free this up a bit more now and see if that changes anything. And it's amazing how different this actually feels. But again, think of this as a training principle and what we're trying to develop. So I'm really getting a nice feeling here of what my hands are doing. And I'm just going to try now feel a little bit more like I'm going to use the ground a bit harder and see if I can almost square that club face up. A complete mishit, but the principle is what we're looking at here. So that's jumped my club speed up. That's starting to feel a little bit more free flow. And to be honest, that feels like my sequence is completely different, like my lower half's working much earlier. Okay, so that's 8 shots. That feels as you'd probably expect. Now what I'm going to do is hit another 5 without it on and see if that's changed any of my data from what we saw at the beginning, and then we're going to look specifically in a bit more detail at the ground reaction forces. Okay, so we're going to hit 5 now, back to normal. Let's see how that feels. Let's see if that's helped in any capacity with just purely that club head speed, ball speed, and overall distance. So just holding the club normal again feels almost strange, but nice. Oh, wow. So that's the worst hit by an absolute mile today. And that feels like everything's been completely thrown out. But what's interesting, even with a miss hit, on average, I think my club head speed's up by about 3 miles an hour there. So that's quite a big jump, even though I've mishit it. Okay, bit of a pull. So I feel like I'm really holding on to that club. Club head speed, carry, similar. Let's try and take a little bit more of the feeling I was taking with the Superspeed in terms of how I was sequencing. What I'm really struggling to do now is find the contact and the bottom of the ball, because I've changed that feeling of where my hands are, which is obviously then where the club head is. That's controlling the awareness of the club head in space. And my whole sequence is out. That's completely thrown off the movement. And it feels like it's all upper body and arms. And although club head speed's slightly quicker, the quality of strike and hit is so much worse that the club head speed's having no real benefit. If anything, it's naturally having that negative. So we just try one more. That's a better swing and hit. It's the only one I have hit properly. Didn't feel great. But again, club head speed 94 miles an hour. So club head speed is significantly up, but that's 198 carry, and I've had similar carries previously with just a normal swing with a lower club head speed. So I think straight away that as a training aid maybe does have some benefits in speed, but it's something that you'd probably practice on its own and then try and practice balls in a different session, because it might throw out all your timing and sequence. But that means you need time to transfer that over. So let's look at the ground reaction force data. So now when we look at this ground reaction force, and then specifically the vertical force, the thing we looked at here is if we go to that first spike, 142%, so as good as exactly the same and occurring in the same position. So it's not increased my overall force production, even though we've increased the club head speed slightly. What that's demonstrating is really I'm just putting more hand speed into the movement, so I'm moving my arms faster. Hence why my sequence was out and I was mishitting it to begin with, because my upper body is outracing my lower body in a way that I wouldn't normally do. But what's very interesting in more of a negative sense is when we look at this, you see how this spike drops and then increases again through the ball, is what we're sort of seeing there is a little bit of me struggling to get stability through the hitting zone and struggling to, if we look at this strong push out the ground, we'd expect that then to drop off a little bit more excessively and then start to regain some height when I land through that lead side vertical. But whereas what we're seeing is it drops off slightly and goes up again, and that actually means I'm not able to push fully out the ground. So basically I'm not exploding out the ground in the same way, and I would put that down to that's because the hands, that's me trying to square up the club face with my hands and not being able to rotate freely through the shot. So in that very short case study, really what we've noticed there is ground reaction forces change slightly, but not necessarily in a positive sense. Club head speed, ball speed can increase slightly, but again, not in a positive sense because strike accuracy has decreased. This is something maybe as a longer term training aid that could work, but has to be practiced in the right way. Obviously, Superspeed are not asking you to hit balls with it, but it has benefits for players like Pádraig Harrington and maybe other players, but it's got to be very individualized and has specific feel to the player.